So it's not the ideal way to launch it, with a series of dodgy leaks, but the newly revealed draft Labour manifesto is a breath of fresh air. Gone are the vague, centrist politics of, well, my entire lifetime, and back are the clearly identifiable policies of the left. A huge rise in corporation tax, higher income tax for the better off, hundreds and thousands of new council homes, an end to tuition fees, billions of pounds for schools, and last but definitely not least, the wholesale nationalisation of the railways, Royal Mail, and part of the energy industry. There's something here for everyone. Even bumblebees get a look in. But the main point is that this manifesto stands for something. We all know Jeremy Corbyn is a true lefty. Why be half-hearted? Labour is going all out, giving voters a clear ideological choice. And you know what? They may actually like it.
Afua, can I just get this right? So you're saying that you're encouraging him to tax wealthy people. Is that the point you're making?
If you want to get into the detail, I think that the corporation tax is a good idea. I have some issues about the income tax brackets, but I think generally the principle of asking those with the broadest shoulders to carry the biggest burden makes logical sense.
I mean, the only issue... I mean, listen, I get the whole argument that, yes, I think if we can put more money into education, I think it's fantastic, and I'd be all for that.
And where would you like that money to come from?
OK, so let me tell you. The starting position is the government generates $570 billion a year in kind of its revenue base. So it's not they don't have the money, it's what they choose to do with the money, I think, that is in question here. Because it's a case of priority. So I'll give you an example. Because of the reckless way the government runs its own finances, they've borrowed too much money. The cost of borrowing alone, just the interest charge, is £35 billion a year. So if you hadn't have made that stupid mistake, you would have the money to put in education. We spent $11 billion a year, in administrating, running government. Now, we all know that we could do that better and more efficiently. So my argument is we have the money, we're just not very smart on how we deal with it. Already, people who work hard, who build businesses, who create jobs, they already shoulder the biggest burden of taxation. The top 10% taxpayers in this country pay 56% of the tax already. So there comes a point when you're killing what creates business, creates the economy, creates jobs, etc. So I'm not sure that would be, how much are you going to attack them? Because they're already responsible for more than half the tax we collect.
That's true, James, but at the same time, we still have the lowest corporation tax in the G7. So the idea that we're kind of killing businesses with extortionate tax rates is simply not true. And actually, this government has lowered corporation tax and plans to lower it even further. And the rises that Labour is proposing
stimulates the economy.
Would still make us the lowest in the G7. So it's not like we're taking us into some kind of Marxist extreme.
It generates more revenue because the more you incentivise, the more you encourage. Look at what's happening in France today. As soon as Macron's being elected, the first thing he's going to do is cut corporation tax by 33%. Because
by 33%?
By 33% to 25%.
Which is still higher than...
It is, but the point I'm making is he's going the opposite.
I think it's currently at 33%,
yeah, but which means
he'll 25%.
So he'll cut it significantly. Yeah. But the point I'm making...
But it would still be higher than our current rate of corporation tax.
But my point is, in Britain, because it's lower... Our economy has done brilliantly well. It encourages businesses, but also businesses invest more. If you take that away, they invest less. It creates less jobs. So what I'm saying is, I'm agreeing with you, we should find the money. I'm just saying, I think you're looking in the wrong place.
But also the fact is that the flow of money, so although you say corporation tax, that does affect real people. It doesn't just affect the businesses, it affects real people in terms of their salaries and what gets spent, as you rightly say. I think it's a really fine line between pushing people too far and obviously then letting people off, not paying what you think they should be paid, and the broad shoulders argument. But it is difficult because equally, if you push too hard, particularly as the climate is at the moment with Brexit, we could end up actually going so far the other way, where we have to reduce taxes so much just to encourage people to come into the country to then stimulate the economy. So I think it's a really tricky time. And it's not that I don't agree with paying, the wealthier people paying a bit more. I think particularly if it's ring-fenced. We've had lots of discussions about, well, if you could ring-fence a certain amount of tax to the NHS, we all agreed we'd pay it. The problem is, I don't trust the people we give the money to spend it wisely, as you rightly say. And actually, I think we're going to end up in a situation where the last thing we should be doing at the moment, going forward over the next couple of years, is talking about increases in tax, purely because I think we're in such a delicate time in terms of Brexit negotiations.
While you were busy making plain food packaging, I was reading the blueprint for the Labour Manifesto, of course, Das Kapital, which is supported in part by the Shadow Chancellor and by the leader of the Labour Party. Afua, why would you want to base any form of draft manifesto on something which is in some way inspired by a regime that can be seen to be utterly bankrupt and failed around the world?
Nick, that is completely ridiculous. This manifesto is not a Marxist manifesto.
No,
and of course, somebody like you, the only thing you can say is to try and smear it in a crude and unsophisticated
James has put the most comprehensive business argument to you. I'll just add one thing, which is from the Institute of Financial Studies. I'm sure you're aware. Increasing rates will raise... Institute of Fiscal Studies, my apologies, will raise less revenue in the medium to long run because firms would respond by investing less in the UK.
That is a prediction.
Pardon me?
That's a prediction, not a fact.
Oh, so you're a better economist than these guys?
No, but...
My goodness, where does it end with you? So now you know that as well.
I am a woman of many talents. You know what, I would just like to say...
Do you not think the Institute of Fiscal Studies would be worth listening to?
The Institute of Fiscal Studies has said it is an effective way of generating revenue, that there is the danger in the long term that businesses change their behaviour or leave the country.
Or stop investing.
Or stop investing. On that, I'd like to say...
Or cut wages for payroll.
And that's true, there can be a knock-on effect. On that, I would say, if we're that scared of alienating businesses, why have we done what they all said they don't want us to do and leave the EU? That's the first thing. And the second thing I'd like to say is that businesses, if you talk to businesses, James, I'd be interested to hear what you say about this. A lot of them complain about the problems with skills in our economy. They say that our infrastructure, the lack of skills, school leavers and graduates, is a serious problem and a cost for them. So if you invest, as this Labour manifesto promises to do, a serious amount in education, it will have a benefit, a positive benefit for businesses as well.
Listen, I wholeheartedly agree with you. I think the point you're making is correct. But let me give you a parallel example. So if I run a business and I want to invest more money in my people, I don't just put my prices up. What I do is I look at the income I have and I think I need to prioritise some of that by making reductions somewhere else. I'm saying when you've got 560 billion to play with, there's a lot of flexibility there. It's choices. I'm saying that I'm disappointed that the government doesn't prioritise the area that you're talking about, because if they did, we have the money. You know, even the 11 billion that we spend on admin...
I was going to say, what would you... Because I often have this discussion with people on the right, I don't know if that's how you see yourself, but it's the exact same conversation I have with them about inefficiency, about saving, from wasteful administration, from spending tax revenue properly. You know, we all want that. No one wants to live in a wasteful society with unnecessary bureaucracy. But if that were easy, every government would have been doing it. And meanwhile, the cost is that school funding is facing its first real-time cut. We're facing a social care crisis. The NHS is in crisis. It's damaging the fabric of society, and somebody's got to come up with the answer. And if you look at what the Conservatives are saying, they're saying they can solve it without any extra money. That, to me, that doesn't
Because
add
I
up.
think they can do it better, they can do it more efficiently, because I do think it's possible. Even if you take the 35 billion that we spend just on interest charges, if we were more disciplined, we paid our debts, we would reduce the deficit.
Yeah, I think you said that, James, which was... So can I just move it on? We could talk a long time about how when you raise tax rates, after a certain point, your revenue peaks and then it's called the Laffer curve.
Oh.
It's a Laffer minute. And, but what I think we should be talking about is really the political offer in this manifesto, which is, he's saying we're going to be possibly a higher tax economy than we are, because what the Tories are saying is after Brexit we might have to turn into Singapore. So what we're seeing is a clear choice at last between, return to the 70s or a party that wants to take the country back to the 50s, where, it's blue passports and bluebirds over the white cliffs of Dover and Royal Yacht Britannia. So it's now a really clear choice between the two. And the red flag is now flying again in the Labour Party. And I think people will understand that. It's going to cut through, but beware raising corporation tax
Didn't work
too
in the
high.
70s. Why would it work now?
You know what, Nick?
What didn't work? Nothing worked in the 70s.
Okay.